Hi, I'm Sharon Spangler, and welcome to this Reno TV. My guest is Council Member Dan Gustin, and we're going to talk about the Virginia Street Bridge project. Welcome to our program.
Thanks, Sharon. Good to see you again.
Many of you have crossed that bridge, I'm sure, if you've been in Reno for any length of time. It's been around since 1905, not that anybody is probably alive anymore.
I guess the mayor's the only one who can remember that. I can't, certainly.
Anyway, the bridge has been made famous by movies, and there's this myth that in the 40s, when women came to Reno to get their quickie divorces, they would throw their wedding rings over the bridge. Is that true?
You know, I really can't disprove it, but there's no proof that I've seen. I talked to Guy Rocha one time ad infinitum about that, and he claims that it really isn't true, although the old F.W. Woolworths, that's just on the corner of Virginia and First Street, claims they used to do a great business in look-alike wedding rings. Very inexpensive, $2, $3 rings. So I'm guessing that a lot of that may be myth, and people perpetuated that by keeping the good diamond or the good wedding ring and going to Woolworths, buying the imitation and tossing in the river for the fun of it. But nobody I know has ever found a diamond down there or has made any money with their hunting and searching and looking the river for these supposed wedding rings that were thrown in.
I guess if you went out there now, you'd have to go way downstream.
Move pretty quickly, that's for sure.
Yeah, and then there's the Marilyn Monroe movie, The Misfits, where she's walking along the bridge and they discuss tossing it, but she doesn't quite toss it in.
Yeah, like you say, there's been a lot of talk about it, but the facts are few and far between, that's for sure.
What is happening with the Virginia Street Bridge project? Maybe first off, as we mentioned, 1905, that's pretty historic. There must be a very good reason for having to replace that bridge.
Well, there is. And for some people, unfortunately, the historic nature, they want that to override everything. And being a member of the flood project, we had a very difficult decision at the time, and everything at the flood project is unanimous vote to say that that bridge needs to be replaced. It came down to safety. It currently is the #1 most susceptible or dangerous bridge in the state of Nevada.
Wow.
So a lot of people don't know that, and the thing that it works okay now, but it certainly is crumbling within. That's the problem. The second problem is that when we have major water flood occurrences, that center span in the bridge tends to block up an awful lot of debris that comes down the river. Debris is an interesting thing. I watched the 97 and the 05 floods. I don't know where all that debris came from. I don't know if people were cleaning their yards or what they were doing, but there was a tremendous amount. If you remember, we had cherry pickers or pickers on top of the bridge that was they were removing the debris to try to get the water flow. So the bridge being unsafe is one thing. 100 and plus years old now, 106 years old, isn't the necessary factor, but it goes hand in hand with the bridge being unsafe and the state. The Department of Transportation declaring it the most dangerous bridge in the state, so it needs to be replaced. Now, what kind of bridge? Now, that's the big question, of course. There was just recently a community meeting, the Jacobs people that were hired, and I sat through that presentation, by the way. There were 13 different companies that presented to build the new bridge downtown.
Wow.
They were narrowed to 4, and from that 4, Jacobs was selected. Jacobs Engineering is in Las Vegas, they're in Reno, they're worldwide. They know what they're doing. They put a team together to show the community some of the options. And I've been very vocal about the fact that the bridge, I understand it has to be a single span, but not to be ramped up on either side of Virginia Street. I think if it's ramped up on the south side, then you disturb the historic nature and everything of the former Riverside Hotel, which is now the Artist Lofts. And the north side, it still causes problems. So we're talking about a single span. Should it be hydraulic? I have been in favor of hydraulic.
Interesting.
Well, the thing is, a couple knowledgeable engineers that I know in town here, and certainly I don't know very much about engineering, I can spell it most days, but they tell me that hydraulic would be very simple in terms of what you would need. One of them even said you could bring a pickup truck from the city with a unit in the back of the pickup and lift the bridge. Well, it isn't quite that simple, because what happens is the mechanics of the bridge require a lot of maintenance. and continual maintenance, because it's easy to plug in the hydraulic and say, okay, why didn't the bridge go up? Well, there can be something inside. So in looking at it, it is the most expensive bridge, and there lies the problem, if you will.
So the key factors are you want to maintain some historic look and feel, and then you've got money issues and other things that go into deciding, the flood issues, deciding what kind of bridge to put up. There is a movement to, at least in some ways, preserve some of the history.
There really is. There are a lot of people talking about some of the ironwork, some of the light fixtures on the bridge. Those are things that you can tie to the past. They're very simple. What you don't really want to do, because it doesn't enhance your image at all, is to recreate a bridge. You don't want a replica bridge.
Well, isn't one of the reasons that the bridge needs to go down is the design, the way that it's shaped, that it lends itself to debris getting stuck there?
It is, and the center structure is the main issue. So if you have a span bridge that spans the river, you allow a lot more water to go through, and it's not going to be caught up, or the debris is not going to be as caught up as much as it is if you have something in the river. So that's a key issue. Back to the historical nature and doing that, I think that from what I saw the other day at Jacob's presentation, they're looking at that. They're looking at some historic elements that give tribute to the past, but don't replicate it.
Right, and I think that's a point well taken, because that's a good way to really please everybody, because there are quite a few people, you included, that really care about the history of Reno. It actually probably the whole state, but in particular Reno. It's my understanding there's 5 different designs that they're looking at.
No, Sharon, I thought there were 6, but there are quite a few. There really are quite a few different designs, and I will give Jacobs kudos for listening to the input they have, because there's a Virginia Street subcommittee, which I sit on, along with Councilman Ayazi, and they've had a couple meetings and asked people, trying to break it down. What are some of the elements you want? And they've tried to do that in the 6 bridges that I saw, or 5, whatever the number was, in showing it to the public. And they gathered information. They had questionnaires. Which one do you like? Why do you like it? Why do you like this? Why do you not like this feature? I haven't seen the outcome of the meeting that they had at McKinley School, the public meeting that they had, but they did a really fine job. I mean, the room was full of people. Great. They had a lot of easels and presentations, and they let it go kind of free-flowing. They didn't stand up and tell you what they wanted you to hear. They wanted to hear what you had to say as a member of the public. So I thought that was pretty good. There were a couple that I really liked that had kind of a cutout in the bridge where you could not only have pedestrian traffic, you might have bicycle traffic, and you could look out over the river. I like the historic nature of some of the light fixtures they put on the bridge. So as a first meeting, and in introducing it to the public, I thought they did a really fine job.
Nowadays, we're talking about the Virginia Street Bridge, which is over 100 years old. Nowadays, do they build a bridge that's going to last 100 years, or you expect it to last longer than that?
No, they expect it to last 100 years. Maybe even longer, but they expect it to duplicate the 106-year-old bridge they've had in terms of longevity. I was asked the other day, the mayor has a committee where he invites people from the community to come in and talk about a lot of different things. And one guy said, well, what happens if we don't do anything with the bridge and the bridge falls down? I said, well, you use Sierra Street. That's what, unfortunately, it's come to that eventually that bridge will have to be replaced. Now, it's a traction project for the city of Reno, and the Flood Project Coordinating Committee outlined some traction projects. The North Truckee Drain was one in Sparks. You know about the Walmart and that wall over just near the Grand Sierra. That was another. Downtown Reno and Virginia Street Bridge, because of its jeopardy of not being usable, was deemed a traction project. $2 million from the flood project, and they get 1/8% sales tax for the project to do the things they need to do. $2 million was put into this first phase that we're talking about now, the study and design and hopeful plan to go forward with the bridge. There's still a lot of money to be raised, and here's the unfortunate part about it. The hydraulic bridge that I talked about, the illustrations they had at this meeting at McKinley School talked about $40 to $50 million. Wow. The bridge they're talking about, think is most feasible, is probably about $20 million. Now you'd think you'd be able to build a whole city for $20 million, right, not just a bridge, but That's what it looks like now. It's somewhere in the 20 to 25 to 28 million dollars. When I was on the flood committee for 6 years, we talked about replacing 6 bridges in downtown Reno. The feasibility and the likelihood of that happening, I think right now are slim, simply because of the economy.
So that'd be like over $100 million.
I know. Isn't that?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a big number. And so where does that, the question's asked, where does that money come from? One of the things, again, I'm not on the flood committee any longer, so I can't really speak for them, but I know that they have put together a different scenario in that the university is no longer a member of their committee. They're now, there's the 3 entities, the county and both cities, and they each have 2 representatives that sit on that. And one of the feasible things they thought was the best way to go about it was there would be an assessment, not only for people in the immediate area of the river, and you know, when you look at $20, $25 million, whatever that turns out to be, right. I mean, that's really not fair. So if we all benefit, they're looking at some kind of citywide or countywide even assessment to pay for the bridges through the town of Reno. People will say, well, why, if I live in the county, do I have to pay for bridges in the city of Reno? Or why if I live in Sparks? Because the economy is so central to the whole northern Nevada area that the last time we had the major flood, when the airport closed and other things closed, we were talking about $800 million in economic impact. Now, right. That's not only to the city of Reno, it's to the entire northern Nevada region. So from a standpoint of making a lot of sense about who should pay for it, it's who's affected by it. And it isn't only the people who live in downtown Reno or live in Reno. So that's still to be determined. I haven't seen the final vote on that and the determination of how much it's going to be and what's going to happen. But that's where the money is projected to come from. Now, we were looking at entitlements and had talked to our congressional delegation about Reno and what needs to be happened. The Army Corps of Engineers has been working with the flood committee, and everybody understands this project went to the top of the list nationwide.
Well, that's good news for us. And also, if we don't come in and come up with a design and a plan ourselves, will the Army Corps of Engineers come in and with a plan? That I remember years ago seeing these plans where it was just these big walls and through downtown Reno for flood protection.
Yeah, and that's no longer a viable option. But to answer your original question, no, the Corps won't come in. And that's why the Flood Control Committee, along with doing a lot of community involvement and asking people and having meetings, they came up with the locally preferred plan, the LPP, the locally preferred plan. So we have a locally preferred plan. It's been taken to the Army Corps of Engineers, but the Corps of Engineers has said that Washoe County, Sparks, and Reno have to be behind this 100% because they have other projects, certainly a lot of them in California, they can move forward. So the continuity and the unity of this area staying together and saying, no, we want this flood abatement plan adopted is really essential, because the Corps won't go out on its own and do it. Matter of fact, they would be all too happy to say, thank you very much, we appreciate working with you, but because you don't have your act together, don't count on us. We've got we've got other things to do. So that's why this is so important that the Flood Committee continues. People of our area, Northern Nevada, the unincorporated areas in both cities, understand what's going on and voice their opinion about what they think should happen.
So the big issue is money, as always. It
is. And another issue, which I haven't brought up because we focused on the Virginia Street Bridge, but that's fine. If you have the cubic feet per second going by that you need 25 or 27,000, whatever that number is, you've got to remember as you go east, there are 2 other bridges. You've got Center Street, and then you've got what I consider to be the real bottleneck, Lake Street. Mm-hmm. Lake Street doesn't pass nearly the amount of water that Virginia currently does. So what do you do? That's the dilemma. That's the points that have to. Those are the points that have to be addressed as the Flood Committee goes forward. It's fine to replace Virginia Street for safety and for water movement, but what happens to those other 2 bridges? That's why when I was on the committee, we looked at 6 bridges, you know, starting at Booth Street all the way down to Lake Street to replace all 6. Well, that became a lesson in reality when you find out how much money that really is.
Boy, it's been over 10 years since the last big flood in Reno, and it seems like people don't really think about it until it's right there and it's happening. And I know that the flood group has really done quite a bit since 1997. And a lot of the stuff is not so visual to all of us. And I think that's part of the issue with getting people to get really concerned and interested in the Virginia Street Bridge. Just to wrap this up, how important is it for citizen input?
I think it's essential. They're eventually going to pay for most of it. So we need to know what you want to pay for and what you don't want to pay for. I think it really comes down to that. You talk about what the Flood Control Committee has done. They have, it used to be the river, the Army Corps of Engineers said the river should be straight and just move the water. Yeah. Now it's meandering. They've changed that out at Lockwood, at Mustang. I talked about the North Truckee Drain, the walls behind the Walmart with the community there getting behind it. So it's important that there's been a lot of good done, as you say, Sharon, maybe not that visible, but a lot about the river being done already with the money being spent. And now the next one is Virginia Street Bridge. It's really important. People need to get involved, at least make their thoughts known.
And there is a website that you can go to. It's vsbreno.com, and you can find out a lot more about the Virginia Street Bridge project.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. It's always a pleasure to have you on our program. We'll be bringing you back time and time again. We're going to talk about the new parking meters in downtown Reno the next time we talk to you.
To talk about those, because I've already gotten the ticket. I didn't understand it, and I think that there might be some other people that are a little confused like I am.
I concur. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for joining us on this Reno TV.